Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me. My name is Jody Chiera, head of golf for K-Motion. This webinar today, we're going to talk about a very appropriate topic, how to give a lesson or teach in a socially distant world. And really, we're going to just go through some best practices today, some things that we know how to set up your area or your studio to make your students feel more comfortable. We'll even talk a little bit about remote coaching and some of the aspects of our ecosystem between K-Coach and K-Player and how you can set that up to teach students from afar where they're not even in the same space as you. We'll go through also some best practices on technical equipment that you need to get your studio or your range area set up to teach a 6-foot lesson where you don't come within 6 foot of the student. And then we'll talk about, actually we'll start off with just some best practices on how to sanitize your garments to make your students feel a little bit more comfortable. But for the most part, I want everybody to be active today in the question box. So, I'm in Arizona. Obviously, as everybody's aware of the situation around the country, Arizona has been one of the least affected areas. So it might be a little bit different here than it is where you all are. So I want to hear a lot from all of you today. We'll definitely spend a good amount of time in the questions area at the end. So even if it's not a question, if it's more of a comment with just something that you all have done, whether it's using Zoom or another video conferencing software to teach group lessons, things like that. We want to hear them on this webinar so that we can share what we're all doing, because it might be appropriate for someone else on and can really help them with their business in this time before things get back to normal. So just one thing for everybody to know, if you look at your GoToMeeting panel where you see question box and everything like that, below the question box, you'll see an area that says handouts, and you should see the number 2 of 5. So there are 2 handouts in there that you all can download right from that link that's in the handout section. So the first one that I'm going to talk to you about is best practices on sanitizing your garments. Okay, so just so everybody's aware, as a company, we are talking to our garment supplier to try and figure out if there's a way to come up with alternative garments that maybe are at a lower cost or even disposable. We're going through those conversations right now, so I don't have any definitive answers. I just want everybody to know that we are aware of some of those concerns, some of those questions, and we are talking to that supplier. Now, we already talked to them about best practices on sanitizing your current garments. So in that handout, you'll find 2 ways to sanitize. One, very simply, if you're teaching a days full of golf lessons and you want to use your K-Coach, what can you do in between sessions? So that is very simple. You can get a Lysol aerosol can. You can lightly spray down your garments with Lysol in between sessions. I say lightly because over time, what they had told us is that it might cause some discoloration or delamination. There's a light laminated cover over the garment, so it might strip that away over time. That's not a huge deal unless you plan on teaching a lot in the rain, so I wouldn't worry too much about that, but that is a side effect of using a lot of Lysol. Now, what can you do more importantly in between days, right? So overnight. So what they have recommended is that you hand wash the garments with a soft washcloth with just a light soap, right? So no harsh cleaners, no Clorox or anything like that, just a light dish soap with a washcloth. Wipe the garments down. Make sure you take the sensors out of the garment before you do that, okay? We don't want any soap to get inside or water to get inside the sensors. So take those out of the garments, wash it down lightly, okay? You can rinse it off as well, right, after that. And then air dry is the most important thing. So do not put the garments in the an electric dryer or use a hair dryer on the garments. Just let them air dry overnight. Okay, so that is the best practices for sanitizing your garments. Now, if you have any questions on that, type those in. We'll get to those at the end. Okay. The next piece of information in the second handout that you have are the technical specs or hardware specifications of what you will need to set up your studio or your area to teach a socially distant golf lesson or baseball lesson for that matter, right? So I know we sent out invitations to our entire database for this webinar. So I'm hoping that we have golf and baseball and maybe even medical or fitness on, right? Because it applies to everyone. So what do we have to set up that type of a studio? So the first thing that you'll notice is I have a second monitor on the floor next to me. So you can go order off of Amazon. We put links in there with what we use. You don't have to use what we use. There's a lot of things out there by way of floor monitors or just, you know, general computer monitors. So this one is an HP, but the thing I want to stress to all of you that's important for the floor monitor is that it has a tilt capability, right? So here it's flat up and down, right? Obviously I can come in and I can tilt it on an angle. A lot of them will go to about a 30 or a 45-degree angle. That's really important so that your students, if they are working on their golf swing, you know, let's say that maybe they're doing, you know, an overhead squat, you know, something they can look at on the ground. If they're playing baseball, you've got a tee here, whatever it is. If they're batting, anything that they can have on the ground to look at a comfortable angle so that they don't have to stretch and look up, right? A lot of the times in our studios, we have TVs on the wall, but if you're working with a player, especially with golf, the golf swing, and if you're working on posture, you don't want them standing over the golf ball like this and having to look up at a monitor up on the wall. That's going to be a bit counterintuitive to getting them in a proper posture. So floor monitor has tilt capability and has an HDMI port in it. Okay, super important that it's got that HDMI port that you can connect to your computer. Okay, so again, this is so the student can see what you are seeing on your computer screen. All right, so your computer is going to be a good distance away, 6 feet or more, and you're going to go into your computer, and how you connect it is you're going to duplicate your display. Okay, so how we connect it first, as I mentioned, is we've got a link in there as well. You can buy an HDMI cord, right? So it's just HDMI to HDMI. Okay, both sides are exactly the same. Okay, this one is a 15-foot cord. Again, you know, if we're talking about staying 6 feet or more away, at least 6 feet, obviously, but more would be better so that you can have some slack in there and do what you need to do. So this is a 15-footer. That's what I would recommend. And then depending upon what type of computer you're using, if you have an HDMI port in your computer, you don't need any adapter. Okay, you can just go HDMI from the screen to the HDMI to the computer. Now, if you use something like a Surface laptop or anything like that, which is what we recommend at K-Motion, you're going to need an adapter. Now, it's a little tricky because they've changed the input port on the computer recently in the new versions of the Surface laptop and the Surface Pro. So what they used to have, so if you have an older version, by the USB port, you're going to see a port that looks something like that. That is called a mini DV, okay? So this end is going to get plugged into that mini DV port, and then your HDMI end would get plugged into here, and then the other HDMI end would get plugged into your TV. If you have a newer Surface laptop or Pro, they've changed to what we call a USB-C port, which is a lot smaller. It's kind of rounded, right? So you can kind of see what that looks like. Now this is another adapter. This is actually a hub. So it's got SD card ports, it's got a USB, it's got 2 USBs and an HDMI. You can get one of these that have a hub, or you can just get the HDMI straight to the USB-C, plug it into the USB-C on your Surface, just like I told you to do with the mini DV, and then plug the HDMI into the hub, the other end of the HDMI into the TV. Once you do that, you would go to your desktop, hover your cursor over the desktop, and right-click so that you have your little menu that pops up. And then you're going to go to display settings, and you would choose to duplicate display. Once you duplicate the display, whatever you're looking at on your computer will automatically show up on this floor monitor so that you can load up a biofeedback program and get your student to train while you are more than 6 feet away. Okay? Now, with that being said, I know that there are some intricacies to getting the sensors on the student properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what you can do before the student gets there to get the sensors in the garments. Then I'm going to have Connor, one of our account executives, come on over, and I'm going to verbally give him cues on how I would tell them to put the sensors on, which you can do yourself with your students and allow them to follow those verbal cues. So you will take the garments out, obviously, of the pouch. Okay. So we've got the pelvis, we've got the torso, and then we've got the wrist in this case, or you could have the upper arm. Students got the glove, so we'll do that last. So again, my first one here, I know is my upper arm, but what you can do is you can already have your screen on measure. Okay, there's go measure. So now as you move this around, you can see it's down there in the lower right-hand corner. So I know that's either my upper arm or my wrist. So I can put that in that garment. Okay. Second one should be the pelvis, right? That's moving around. Let me just double check. Okay, yep. So there's the pelvis. Put it in the pelvis garment. Leave that on top of the case. And then torso, right? Okay, now obviously, not obviously, but usually you would be having the player use their own golf glove, right? Unless you've got a stock of your own that you use. I know that's not as common, so you cannot put the hand clip on the glove just yet. So you're gonna have to talk the student through that, okay? But I would tell you, make sure that the sensor is firmly inside the clip before you have them put it on their hand, because that's just another step that you don't want to have them to go through. So we'll leave that right there as well, okay? So now I'll have the student come with their glove. So Connor, come on in with your glove, okay? I'll exit stage left. Okay, Connor's now in the hitting zone. Okay, Connor, so the first thing you're going to put on is a pelvis sensor. So you're going to find a garment that looks like a belt. Okay, you're going to hold the sensor over your tailbone. Okay, so it's going to go just below your belt. Okay, great. Now the charging port's going to be facing the ground. Okay, so you've got that correct. You're going to have that on your tailbone, and you're going to extend each side of the garment equally, and you're going to buckle it in front of your belt buckle and below your belt buckle. Okay. Okay, so that should be nice and tight, so if you kind of pull the sensor off a little bit, it'll snap back into place. Okay, great. Next, we're going to look at the upper body garment, which looks like a backpack. Before you put it on, we're going to make sure that the clips on the shoulders are slid up as to the garment as much as they can go, so it's as big as we can get. Okay, and you're going to put that on like a backpack again, with the charging port facing downward. Okay, so again, if it fits, that's great. If it's a little bit loose, you can take the clip and slide it down the front of the strap to where it's a little bit more snug if you need that. Okay, good. The wrist garment is going to go on just like a wristwatch. So you're going to put it on above your glove. You're going to have a charging port facing the fingertips. Okay, and then from there, you're going to slide the strap through, pull it tight. Good, and have that above your glove, right? Great. Okay, so show everybody on the screen just above the glove. Okay, excellent. So finally, the clip. You're going to take the red clip and you're going to slide the back of it through the Velcro of your glove. Again, charging port facing the fingertips. And you're going to pull it tight, and you're going to have it in the middle of the Velcro. You're going to pull it tight across. And then you're going to take the lanyard and slide it over your fingertips between the wrist sensor and the hand sensor. And then you would just tighten that down a little bit. Okay, great. Now, just go ahead and hold your wrists out, flex and extend your wrist, make sure the two of them don't touch, right? Push down on the top of the sensor to make sure all the Velcro is secure, and we're in a good spot. Okay, so if anybody has any questions on that, now I would talk him through calibrating, right? So I'll come in here. So Connor, grab your golf club. Okay, I want you to stand square to the mat for me, straight up and down. We're going to calibrate, club across your thighs, have the hand sensor and the wrist sensor parallel to your target line. Look straight ahead.
Calibration in 3, 2, 1. Calibration complete.
Okay, so now he's calibrated and I have auto capture on. So if we were doing a lesson, Connor could swing away at this point, right? And I don't have to go near him, and I did not touch him to put those garments on, right? That was just through verbal cues. So if you have any questions on those verbal cues or recommendations, go ahead and type them into the question box. We'll get to them at the end. Okay, thank you, Connor. All right, so let's talk through now. So that's one version of a socially distant lesson where you're in the same area, right? So that's your closest model to a real golf lesson, when you're in the same room or the same space as the person, okay? Now, with our ecosystem of K coach to K player, we have another option. You can teach when you're not even in the same room as the player, okay? So we call this remote coaching. A lot of you have probably heard of it already. So what it requires is for you to have a 3D system, usually a K coach, and your player to have our K player system, which is just two sensors, the upper body and the pelvis, that is linked to their own computer. So K player would look like this, right? So it looks just like a K coach box, but it's got two sensors in it rather than four. It's got the upper body and the pelvis garment, right? Because that's what we use for K player. It's just biofeedback. We don't have any measurement. And then if your player has a computer, you can get that loaded up or allow us to help you do that. Our tech support team's always there to help you get your students loaded up with a K player if they have that. But what you can do a little bit proactively is, this is the latest thing out from Microsoft, okay? This is what they call the Surface Go. So I'm using a Surface laptop. They also have the Surface Pro tablet. This is the Surface Go tablet. So it's a little bit smaller. It's about the size of an iPad. It's got a built-in kickstand, okay? So there's your floor monitor for your player, right? And it's got that mini USB-C port. So you'll need one adapter, okay? So we all know what our receivers look like. So I bought this adapter, which is a USB regular to USB-C. So we just plug that in, right? So it goes on the end there. And then the end of it just plugs right into the side of the Surface, right? So there I am. There's my receiver, okay? My player then puts this on the ground and can start training, or on a little stand, whatever they want to do. Now, why I would recommend getting one of these and just basically giving it to your player as a package with the K player sensors is because we can do a lot of work on the front end. We can load up K player on here so that that doesn't have to be on your student. We can get everything loaded up that we need to and make sure that this is functioning properly, so that all they literally have to do is turn it on and follow your instructions on how to get into their program, okay? So how do we send programs, right? That's the big thing about the ecosystem between K-Coach and K-Player. So now that you see this hardware, now by the way, this is only, I believe, $399, right? This Surface Go. So it's pretty low cost, pretty economical if your student wants to buy it as a package, okay? So if I now go in, and I'm on now my K-Coach, right? So I can go in, go to train, just like I'm gonna train someone if we were together. Okay, I can build my own program, of course, but let's say for argument's sake, there's one in here already that I wanna use, right? Let's say the player's got S posture, I wanna give them this program, okay? I can go ahead and add all. Now they go over here, right? So that would be the process of if I was building a program, if the student was right in front of me. It's similar if I want to send a program, but I don't have to go through all those steps. All I have to do is come up here. We've got these 3 square buttons. One says export programs. So it could be a global one like these, okay? So if I go through my global programs, I can just scroll down and find S posture, select it. I want to export it to my K-Motion cloud, and then click export. That generates a URL. So all you'll do is come in here, highlight the URL, Control C to copy it, go into your email, and email that to your player. Okay, now on your player side, once they receive your email, and you can walk them through this, they're going to launch their own K-Player, which instead of it saying K-Coach, it'll say K-Player. These 4 buttons won't be there. It'll just be the train button right in the middle, but they'll go into train, which will look exactly the same as this, right? Once they get into it, it'll look just like this. So they're going to click programs. They're going to click import from URL. They're going to paste it right in that white space, and then they're going to click import. Then it'll show up right in their programs, okay? They'll just have to click client, and it'll be right at the top of the list here. They can then add that program over to the right-hand side like we would normally do, and click launch, and they're training, okay? And they're in a completely different area from where you are, and what you can do is at the point in time that you're gonna be giving them that program, you could be on a FaceTime call or a Zoom call, whatever video conferencing software you use or app that you use. If it's FaceTime, WhatsApp, anything that works with video, you can be on video with them, and it could be literally a lesson that follows that kind of monkey see, monkey do, right? So you can be on video like I am right here. Okay, let me just get the video up. Hold on one second. Okay, so again, it could be monkey see, monkey do, right? I'm the teacher, your student has the sensors on, I might have my sensors on as well. I don't have to, but I could. And let's say you're doing posture, right? And you're saying, okay, let's get, core engaged, flex from the knees a little bit, go ahead, arms out, flex forward, right? And they're doing it with you in the sensors. That doesn't mean that they can't be using those sensors and going through your programs multiple times a day, right? So this is a great opportunity for us to change the message on what it takes to get better at golf and break the mold of what people think they need to do to get better at golf, which is 100 golf balls and a bucket next to them, hitting to the same target with the same club with the same swing. We know that doesn't work. So let's go ahead and try and change that message by using this system, right? Changing your golf swing or changing a part of your golf swing is changing a movement pattern. The only way to change a movement pattern is through repetitions of the new movement pattern. So in hitting a golf ball is something that people think they need to do to change their golf swing, but in reality, hitting a golf ball is only reinforcing the bad pattern. It's actually making it harder for them to change their golf swing. So if you can change that message and say, hey, we're going to change how you move, we're going to use 3D to do that. You can do this in the comfort of your own living room, right? So go through these programs that I'm building you, and then we can start to graduate to the golf course and to the driving range and to a golf ball with a club when the time is appropriate, right? So this is how I teach. This is called progressions. It's very powerful when you get a player to start in a progression with no club, right? Literally, I have no arms on my body, right? Arms are crossed on my shoulders. I'm just getting myself into the right posture with my pelvis and my torso. Then maybe you put something in their hand, right? Go ahead and put the arms on the body. Then go and put the club in their hands, right? Then put a golf ball down. So you don't have to go right to what people think is what they need to do to get better at golf, when we know that it's not the right way. So this could be structured like a daily workout, even a daily stretching routine, right? People do things out of habit every day, especially people that will go or are used to going to the gym or will do some sort of working out. We have to frame it that way in terms of how we change movement patterns. So this is a great way to do that. So as I mentioned, you can have your players purchase a K player and do this ecosystem. Another way to do it is if you want to purchase one yourself to test it out, you can rent it out to them, right? So you can purchase a K player and you can rent it out to your students by week or by month even, right? So one of the models would be, all right, let's go ahead and rent it out to a player for a month. We'll go through a program every week, and you can charge them for your time plus a little bit extra because they've got the K player, which is like having you by their side 24/7 going through that program. So it's not out of the realm of possibility to charge a student, $3.99 a month for something like that. Okay, so just make sure that you kind of think through what your model is in terms of the hourly rate, and then from there, and on top of that, something extra so that they can get that value from doing the program every day if they wanted to, right? And you might only see them once a week. So that's how the ecosystem works. We talked through how to put on garments without going near your player. You've got your handouts on how to sanitize your garments and what you would need hardware-wise to set up your area to teach a lesson with 3D where you don't have to go near the player. So at this point, I want to open it up to questions and comments from all of you so that we can start a dialogue and discuss what you might be doing, or if you have any questions on what I covered so far in this session. So Mason, do we have any questions so far?
We do, Joe, and I think because you started off with cleaning the garments, maybe some folks missed it. We had a lot of questions about that. Could you just go over the end of day and in between lesson process again?
Yep, so 2 ways to sanitize the garments. One would be in between lessons. If you have lessons back to back, you can use Lysol aerosol spray, just lightly spray down the garments. Take the sensors out of the garments first before you spray them, lightly spray them down. The only downside to that is over time, the garments might get a little bit discolored or lose their lamination, right? It might strip that away over time. That's the only downside to that. In between days, so overnight, you can hand wash the garments with a washcloth and just general dish soap, light soap, nothing harsh, no harsh cleaners, and then let them air dry. No putting them in the electric dryer or using a hair dryer or anything like that to dry them off, only air dry. Okay.
Okay, we have a couple K-player questions. The first one is from Mike. Wrist measuring is supposed to be relaxed hand. Oh, sorry, this isn't a K-player question, actually. Wrist measuring is supposed to be relaxed hand and wrist when calibrating, correct?
Correct. So you can have the player, you can do it two ways. You can have them with the club across their thighs with this hand straight up and down, just relaxed, or you can do the same thing without a club, right? Just get their hands square to the target line, relaxed, and then calibrate them that way, either way.
Okay, now a couple K-player questions. Any ability to do wrist and hand training with K-player, and what is the cost?
Unfortunately, no. So wrist and hand training, you would need another K-Coach unit. Now, you can send programs from K-Coach to K-Coach, but remember, the price point's going to be a little bit higher for your student or for you if you're buying it to buy another K-Coach to get the wrist training. A lot of the times, K-Player is enough for players where you can get their body in the biofeedback, and if you wanted to talk about wrist training, you can do that separately. So if you were to buy another K-Coach, that would be that $5,500 price point. K-Player is $24.95 for just the two sensors.
All right, the next question is from Stock. Do you spray or wipe the sensors at all?
You can wipe them lightly with just a damp cloth if you wanted to, but again, you don't want water or soap to get inside the sensors.
All right, this question is from John. If our manager is cleaning our practice gears, which has more than 20, are you saying that we should let it air dry?
Say that again, you broke up in the beginning, Mason. If what?
I might need John to elaborate a little bit, but it is, if our manager is cleaning our practice gears, which has more than 20, are you saying that we should let it air dry?
Yeah, so we might need you to elaborate a little bit, but I can answer the end of that question. Always air dry. You're never going to do anything that, puts heat on the garments, right? No hair dryer, no electric dryer, they have to air dry.
Okay, this question is from Paul. Do you recommend adding time to lessons so people who have no experience wearing garments don't feel rushed?
Maybe in the beginning, absolutely, right? You might want to add 15 minutes so that they don't feel rushed, but I'll tell you after the first one or two times, they're going to get the gist of it, they're going to know the routine, and you probably won't need extra time. So you can take extra time if you really want to make sure that they're not rushed, but I'm just trying to protect all of your time, right? And everybody wants to teach as much as possible, get an ROI on their technology. So you can if you want. I don't think it's necessary after the first one or two times.
Okay, next question is from Pedro, and he's asking if you can use alcohol on the garments to clean them.
I would not, no, just light dish soap, no alcohol, no Clorox, nothing like harsh cleaning chemicals.
All right, that is all the questions we have at this point. If anyone wants to type any more questions in for Joe, now would be the time.
Yeah. And comments, right? If you all have comments on what you're doing, if it's something that I didn't mention, type them in. We definitely can use this time if we need to start a little Cracker Barrel and share experiences and what we're doing that works for us. And if not, that's fine as well, and we can end. So we'll give it about a couple minutes, Mason. Let's see if anything comes through, and then we can go from there.
Sounds good, Joe. All right, we have a couple more coming through, Joe.
Okay.
This is from Dan. If I'm not a golf professional, can I use K-Player to train other non-golf movement sports like baseball, hockey, tennis, etc.?
It's not set up for that, but you can do other things with it, right? So in K-Player, we have hundreds of activities in there. A lot of them are like fitness related even, right? Where you can go through a functional movement training session with yourself, right? Those functional movements could apply to other sports, most certainly. All I'm saying is we don't have specific baseball positions programmed in. But just remember, when you look at an activity, if you do play other sports, I can go in and say, bended address could relate to anything. And if I wanted to, I can go in and even edit this and change the angles, right? So 20 degrees of pelvis bend and 40 degrees of torso bend is good for golf, but not for baseball. So I can go in, I can get myself set, right? I can launch this, train it, and I don't have the garments on right now, but like, let's say, for example, this is just hypothetically the position I wanted to be in. I can go, and I'm by myself. If you're a home user, you can go to timer options, set live. You can go to like 5 seconds, save. You can get in the position you want to get into, right? Let's say it's a baseball stance, and then set guide live.
Setting guides in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Guide set.
Okay, so then that becomes the new setup position, right? So you can do that for anything you want, right? So, and you can even go in to the program, bended address, and if you edit it, I mean, you can name this anything you want. Baseball setup, right? Tennis setup, whatever it is. And then you can save that, right? You can save it after you rename it. So the answer is there's not preloaded activities for other sports, but there are ways to do it, okay? Let me just get this thing down here so I can see my camera. All right. Hopefully that answers your question.
All right, Joe. The next question is from Rich. The Surface Go that we would give to the client, would we need a keyboard?
It's not needed. It's touchscreen, so it does have a keyboard you can purchase separately, but again, I think for ease of use, it's just great to tap the screen. Most of the clients you'll encounter are familiar with using touchscreen, whether it's an iPad or a phone, so there's not going to be much of a learning curve there, and I think it would be even easier to just use a touchscreen.
Great. This next question is from John. At the end of a session, should you have the client conduct the wipe down and removal of the sensors?
I think that's a personal preference. So it depends on you as the coach and how you feel about not wanting to interact yourself, right? Or protecting yourself. So we're all at varying degrees of caution with everything going on. So you certainly could have them do that if you feel better about it, or you could do it yourself, right? Either way, that really depends.
Okay, the next question is from Tracy. Can you tell us again what you would charge for renting the K-Player for the month?
Yeah, this comes down to what your hourly rate is or what the market bears. For a month, if you're giving, let's say, one virtual lesson a week, I would make it at least your time, and then I would take your time and cut it in half, and then I'd add that on maybe 1 or 2x, right? So if you're $100 an hour, you're going to give them 4 lessons through the week or through the month. So that's $400, right? And then I basically cut that in half and tack it on. So another 200 possibly. You can go more. It really depends on what you think the market bears and what your students would pay, but I wouldn't go any less than that.
Okay, this one's from Giles. He was a little late to the start of the webinar and would like to know the name of the Surface Go and a little information on it.
Yeah, so it's called the Microsoft Surface Go. You can go on the Microsoft website. It's in there. It's just a tablet. It's the size of an iPad. It's not as powerful as the Surface Pro, but you don't need it to be more powerful because we're just doing biofeedback. And the price point is $399 through Microsoft. Okay, so you can just use this. It's got a built-in kickstand. You can put it on the ground for the player, and it acts as a separate monitor.
All right, this question is from Connie. As a golf fitness trainer, I do not have access to a golf net. Would you spend an entire hour on just biofeedback with no hitting?
Great question. My answer would be no, because if you do biofeedback properly, the student's probably going to be pretty tired after a half hour. So you can break up your sessions even shorter into half-hour increments on the fitness side would be my recommendation. And again, you can charge whatever you like for that, but I just think doing it for an hour is going to be a little bit much for the student.
All right. Joe, can you use the Surface Go as your second monitor?
Yes, absolutely. It's got a kickstand on it, and you can use that as the second monitor if you'd like.
All right. For the peak speed sequence, what is the main problem for torso come latest, the 4-spot? I mean, pelvis, torso, lead arm, club. This is kind of an open-ended one, I believe.
So what is the issue? What is the issue when the peak speed of the torso comes last, Mason? Is that the question?
That's correct.
Okay, so again, there are a lot of reasons. One could be physical issues, right? So if a player has limitations anywhere in the torso, whether it be T-spine, shoulder, scapula related, a lot of the times that will delay the acceleration of the torso. And the other one, most common one, could be technique related, right? So if I get up to the top of my swing and I'm in massive reverse spine angle, well, I'm not going to be able to accelerate my torso appropriately. So a lot of the times you'll see the arms throw, and that'll cause the torso to slow down as well or peak later, right? So it could be a number of other things. Those would just be two popular ones that you'll see.
All right. This is from John. Will the Surface Go work with K-Coach?
Not as well, right? So it's a little bit of a slower processor, so we don't recommend it for K-Coach. It is okay for just K-Player, and I tested that. So I just wouldn't recommend going any more than that.
Okay, we have another question from Connie. Is it okay to use a weighted club, the short one, for the biofeedback drills?
It depends on what your purpose is. Weighted clubs obviously are going to provide or produce more force when you put the player in motion, right? Because we have more mass. So if you're trying to use a weighted club to get them into good top of swing positions, I would say no. So it really depends on what you're trying to do. But if it's anything related to actual golf positions, I would recommend no on that.
All right, this is a question from Dan. This may seem an odd question, but for visual people, would the screen be able to be adjusted to suit the sport? i.e., if it's a baseball player, do you have the capability to adjust the visual output? Sports teams may get a little spun out on the visual.
I'm talking about the actual avatar. One thing to note is we talked about K-Coach and K-Player on this webinar. We also have a product called K-Baseball, which is very similar to K-Coach, but the avatar is in a baseball uniform, right? And we actually have baseball drills in the biofeedback for K-Baseball. So we do have a baseball product, and I would recommend looking at that if you're on the baseball side. Absolutely.
All right, Joe, that is all the questions we have at the moment. If we give people another minute, if anyone has any more questions or comments, please put them in now.
Yep, and if you don't, we're going to send out this webinar link. So please, again, watch it. If you have any future questions, you can certainly reach out to us. If anything comes up later, right, we're happy to answer those. But hopefully this gave everybody a bit of an understanding on how you can still make students feel comfortable in what's going on in the world today, and even how you can grow your business and coach students that are not even anywhere near you, right? They could be in a different country even, and you can coach them remotely. We good, Mason?
Oh, I've got a couple more. I did miss one from Brian. Thanks for pointing it out, Brian. Joe, I have problems with torso sensor slipping a lot. Any tricks to help that?
Yeah, so the one thing with the torso garment that you'll find if it slips, the way it slips is it rides up too high. So unlike the pelvis, make sure that the torso is not too tight. The tighter it is, the more it's going to ride up. So remember, when a player, especially in golf, gets into their golf posture, right? If I'm standing here upright, my shoulders are more retracted than when I get into posture, right? My shoulders protract when I get into the posture. So it actually tightens it down a little bit when my arms extend. So don't over tighten it when they're standing up, because when they do get into their posture and go extend their arms, it will ride up a lot easier. So a little bit on the loose side is actually better for the torso garment.
All right, we have a question from John. How would you handle sensor malfunction, meaning conducting a drift fix?
Yep, so drift fix, I'll show you here quickly. If you are in measure mode, okay, you can go down to the bottom right, click on the K-Coach icon. You can click drift fix. It'll ask you which sensor to identify you want to perform drift fix on. So there's pelvis. You just follow those prompts that you're seeing on the screen, step 1, 2, and 3. So you're going to spin the sensor on 3 different axes. And when you're ready, click start and just keep following along with the video. When you're done, a score will show up. And generally anything over 85 or higher is good enough. And you can continue on. If it didn't get to a score of 85, start over, do it again. Try and do it a little bit more accurately the second time around. Okay.
Joe, would you recommend that the client do that part during social distancing, pull the sensor out?
And do the drift fix?
Correct.
You could, absolutely. Again, it might just take them a little bit longer if they're not used to it. But there's the visual prompt, so it shouldn't be an issue.
Joe, John has asked, can you clarify the sensors for K-Player?
Yeah, so with K-Player, the only 2 sensors that are included are the pelvis and the torso. You're not going to have the lead arm or wrist or hand. So it's just these 2. So it's biofeedback training for the body. Pelvis, upper body, bend, side bend, and rotation.
All right, I've got another one. Joe, can you give a drill to fix early hand on sequence and peak speed?
Yeah, so early hand, I'm assuming they're talking about early hand and arm acceleration. So again, it's either a physical thing or it's a technique thing, right? So physical, there are hundreds of reasons why that'll happen, so I can't really speak too much to that accurately, but I will tell you that technique-wise, if you get a player up to the top of their swing and the arm is stretched too far across their chest, so we have too much stretch across the lead shoulder, that's going to act like an elastic band, and it's going to sling the arm off the body faster in transition, which will always lead to faster acceleration of the lead arm. So I would generally try and get a player to have a little bit more slack in there where the arm's not across their body as much, and then allow their torso to turn into their arm, which will allow them to load the shoulder at the right time, and it'll delay the acceleration of the lead arm.
Okay, this one's from Steve. Any suggestions for other types of short clubs for indoor use if you don't recommend the weighted clubs?
Yeah, you could certainly take a regular golf club and cut it down, put a grip on it, and you might just add a little lead tape to it to make it more accurate. There are other things out there. I don't remember the actual names of them, but there are other things out there that act like a golf club, but they don't even have a club head on them. It's more like a ball on the end. So, anything like that, you could type in, short golf club training aid to Google, and I'm sure a lot of stuff will come up.
All right, got a comment from Paul. When I have a good player, I use double-sided tape and just tape the torso sensor where I want it on the player's body. Do you ever do that, Joe?
Yes, but again, you gotta have a player that's willing to let you do that, right? So the theme of this webinar is socially distant, so that kind of goes against the theme. But if you want it to not move, then yes, that is something I've done in the past.
All right, this question is from Tracy. With a new golfer, do you suggest starting with the swing evaluation, including the 5 swings with the driver and 5 swings with the 6-iron?
Yes, absolutely. That evaluation will give you a lot of information on what to work on with the player. So getting that data would be important if you can be in front of the player and have the opportunity to do that.
All right, we've come to the end of our questions.
Great. Well, again, we will email this out to everybody that's on, or if you registered and couldn't attend, we will email it out to those people as well, in case you know anybody that's asking. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully this gave you some insight into how we can continue to work in the world today in the short term. Again, if you have any further questions that come to you, you can reach out, no problem, and we will email this out as well as post it on our social media, on our Facebook page. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully everybody has a great day. Thanks for joining.